Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm excited to be here with Emily, who's a VP product from Diffeo. Emily, if you want to quickly tell us a tiny bit about yourself and about Diffeo.
Yeah, so like Francis mentioned, I am a co-founder of Diffeo, and what we're doing at Diffeo is we're building an AI-powered research assistant. So we connect to all of the tools you use, so your Microsoft Word, your browser, Quip now, and your Salesforce org. And just as you're going about your normal research activities, in the background, Diffeo is searching the web and any of your internal content you've connected to find you the best recommendations that will fill in your knowledge gaps about whatever you're researching. And then we show you these recommendations just right alongside your document as you're working. So just trying to help you fill in your knowledge gaps without you having to leave your workflow at all.
Yeah, and it was very exciting to see Diffeo yesterday. For those who missed the Quip keynote, was one of the top apps that was presented for the integrations with Quip. So really excited to see how that works out for you guys. I'm Francis. I'm a co-founder at Madkudu. We're a predictive analytics platform for B2B SaaS companies. And what we do is that we help sales teams build a sales process that adapts to customers rather than have customers adapt to the sales process. So it's really about creating an organic sales process based on AI to know what is the optimal next step to take for a lead to ensure that they move forward. And so today what we're going to do is going to bounce off a couple questions about how we've thought about AI and how it actually helps our customers be happy. And so the first question I had for you, Emily, was, there's a lot of hype around AI, and there's a big question, which is, do your customers really care that much that you use AI in your product?
Yeah, well, since it is kind of a hot topic, I think it does, create a little excitement. But besides that, I think that our users really don't care that we're using AI for the sake of using AI. I think they mostly care about how we change their workflows. And so before Diffeo, our researcher users were going to tons of different knowledge bases and different portals and all of their shared drives and going to all of these different places and searching each of them individually, which would take hours or days, if not weeks. They were doing all of that before. And with Diffeo, now they actually, it just saves them a ton of time and makes their lives easier. And that's really what they care about. I think the one thing unique to AI that our users care about is, since we're learning from their behavior, learning from all of their interactions they take, we're actually able to give them better recommendations the more they use our tool. So I think in that sense, the AI is a cool factor for them. But besides that, I think they mostly just want a tool that works. They don't care what we're doing in the back end. They want something that makes their lives easier at the end of the day.
Right, and I think that's almost one of the fundamental components about AI that's really interesting, is that for us, a lot of customers care about AI, and I think it's because they have this mental representation that if we implement AI, it's going to make their job easier because they don't have to worry about how things are going to work. It's just, plug in AI and the right result is going to come out. So to them, it seems like it's going to make things easier. And I think it's like part of it, and we'll speak about that, I think there's a fallacy behind that you can't just plug in AI and it's magically going to work. So people care about it because they've been educated by all the marketing around AI to think that it's actually magical and that it's going to work out of the box when it's not necessarily the case. Which kind of leads me to the next question. In your sales process and when you're talking to prospects, how does the current hype of AI actually impact your sales process?
For us, honestly, I think it's helped us because a lot of the people that we're talking to who are making these purchasing decisions are told by people above them, we need to be using AI. It's the next big thing. We really need to get on this train. So honestly, I think it's helped us mostly. Of course, there is, since it is it's the thing everyone's talking about, there is a lot of noise out there. So, sometimes you just have to break through that noise and really, really prove that what we're doing is valuable, to stand out from the rest of the crowd. But, like I said, I think it's helpful. It piques people's interest. So I think it's been very helpful for us.
That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting to see how AI actually has, the hype is generating different kinds of impacts at different stages of the funnel, where definitely the hype that, like we're all riding the boat of AI and riding that wave, it definitely helps initiate the conversations. I think what's really interesting is to see that when we talk to companies that have slightly more experience with AI, there's been a lot of deception, and they haven't been necessarily successful with previous AI implementations. And I think when we really get closer to the very end of talking about how it's actually going to impact and how it's going to create value, then it becomes a much trickier conversation. And I always use, like recently there was this big, for those who follow a bit of IBM's Watson, there was a big setback when like some of the promises the marketing team had made of how they were going to cure cancer and all that kind of stuff actually ended up not being true, and MD Anderson kind of pulled out of the whole project. I think that's a perfect example of how the hype generated this like very top of funnel kind of engagement and everyone buying into the idea that AI is going to work. But then when it comes to actually implementing it and getting value from it, if you haven't thought about how the workflows are going to be changed and how it's actually going to change your operational processes, it becomes a mess. And so I think that's where like the hype is really helping and generate a lot of top of funnel type of interest. But then as we move down, it's becoming really tricky because people are starting to get more and more burnt by different implementations of AI. And I think it's just going to set the bar a lot higher in terms of the value that people create. So maybe moving to a slightly different topic. So we've spoken a bit about sales and how AI helps. I think one really interesting component that very few people have been thinking about, and I think you guys have done a great job on it, is like, how does AI change your way of thinking about UX? How do you design a product around AI, and how is that fundamentally different from products that were designed in the past?
Okay. Well, so one really important thing when you're designing an AI product is you need to get a lot of user feedback to learn from. Without that, there's nothing to learn from. So I think, one big challenge for us has been designing our tool in such a way that we can get that feedback we need, but without forcing the user to do any extra work and without forcing them to leave their workflow to give us feedback. It's so tempting for us to, when a user gets rid of one of our recommendations, for us to ask, like, why did you get rid of that? And have like 5 different choices to get the most feedback as possible to help us. But really, I think at the end of the day, it's not our users' jobs to help us train our models. So I think the more we can align our goals, which is getting feedback with our users' goals, which is just doing their job, I think that that's how we've been really focusing on this. I think the best way to learn from them is just to observe the user in their natural habitat and not really make them do anything extra to give us feedback. Just watch in the background what they do, what pages they're going to, what interactions of ours, what recommendations of ours they're interacting with, and really not make them do anything extra. So I think that's a pretty big challenge in and of itself, just trying to get that feedback but without really changing the tool too much. And so I think in the back of our minds, as we're designing our tool, we really have to be aware of the fact that we can't really make our users. They already have a job to do, a full-time job, and they don't have the time to really go out of their workflow to give us that feedback. So just trying to be in the background, and yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Feedback is definitely one important component, I think. And this is particularly important for anyone who's an admin. Like typically if you're an admin and you're going to implement Salesforce and Einstein, I think what we've seen a lot, and this is common to any AI product, is that because it becomes a black box, it's very different from anything we've ever dealt with in products, right? If you think of workflows in Salesforce, you give a workflow, it's binary input, you know exactly what the output is going to be based off of that. Now when we start going into AI, there's this kind of black magic that's happening where you give an input, you don't really know what's happening in the middle, and then at the end you get a result. So what that means is that as an admin or someone who's providing an AI product, your end users are now going to be served with results that you don't entirely control. And that drastically changes the way that us as product builders and you guys as admins or users of this intelligence have to think about the results and what you're seeing in the product, because very few people are going to be able to dive into the exact criterias and scenarios to understand how things are happening, why they're happening in the way they are. Even just lead scoring, that's one of the most basic examples that we see, is really tricky because it's very obvious to say, oh, Elon Musk, if he signs up for my product, of course he's qualified. Everyone knows that. But then there's all these corner cases where reps are not going to be in agreement, but the AI says it's a good fit because of 2 data points that are arguable, and you don't really necessarily have all of the statistical data to go and check why it is the case. So that's definitely going to be something that I think, to Emily's point, admins don't necessarily have more time than they would like to have today, but I think AI is actually going to create a burden to some extent on them, because now they're going to have to go and deep even further into all the workflows that leverage AI to be able to answer questions that are going to be coming from the end users. And I think that's really a big component that everyone has to be aware of, that it's not magical thinking, and there's going to be a lot of work to put in to understand how that works. And so maybe on a more happy note, I guess, can you tell us a bit about how AI so far has made your customers happy, and maybe some success stories?
Yeah. So, one major way is just that. So, like I mentioned, our users are all analysts who are doing really in-depth research on, maybe a company or a person, spending, depends on the project, but, maybe weeks of their time just focusing, doing research on one specific topic. And so they're searching all of these different places, they're doing a lot of manual queries, and it's very time consuming. And what our users are really good at is analysis. That's their job, but more and more they're spending time just gathering the information and curating the information, and leaving them a lot less time to focus on analysis. But so with our tool, since we're taking a lot of that searching and all of those disparate sources out of the equation for them, they really have a lot more time to focus on what they're good at, which is doing the analysis. So I think in that way we're making them very happy, saving them a lot of time, and also uncovering things they might have missed. But then, another way is that since our tool is learning from every little action our users take, we're able to give them better recommendations in the future. Our tool is actually improving the more they use it. So I think in that sense, our users are really happy to know that the time they invest in using our product is really worth it, because in the end, they'll just end up getting better recommendations from us. So I think that's a big seller for us as well.
Yeah. It makes a ton of sense. I think one of the things that I take away from your product is definitely how AI really helps in simplifying complex workflows. And I think one of the things that Diffeo does is if you need to do some research about a given topic, it's very complex, you have to go into a lot of different places, and their AI actually brings it into, all together in one place. And I think that's one of the big things also for us where AI brings a ton of value, is in simplifying workflows and addressing specific pain points to make them easier for the end user, and making a more frictionless experience overall. I think another kind of input on at least my thoughts around AI. I know there's a lot of talk around kind of people thinking that Skynet is the next new thing where we're going to have this AI that does everything. My vision on this is that we're actually going to have a more kind of organic growth of AIs, and there's going to be tons of different AIs that specialize at doing one thing really well. And I think DeepMind is kind of showing that, where they have something that does really well one thing, but it's not that good yet at doing others. And I think ultimately what's going to happen, and the way products are going to make customers happy, is by solving one problem extremely well and having the AI constantly learn, because it's only focusing on one thing. And it's really important when, as an admin or as a buyer, to look at what is the workflow you're trying to optimize, and look for the specific AI that has been trained for that specific task. Because if you start buying into things that are generic, then it's not necessarily gonna meet the expected goal. So maybe going into more things for if any of you are founders or entrepreneurs or want to think about building products with AI, I guess would be really interested in hearing when you guys started building the product, what worked and what didn't work in terms of building an AI product?
I think for us, I've mentioned this a little bit already, but one thing that we saw did not work at all was making the users do any extra work beyond their workflow. There's one funny story where, when a user would get rid of one of our recommendations that we showed them, we had so many different buttons, so many different reasons we wanted to know why they were getting rid of this recommendation, and it was just so cluttered, and the interface was so cluttered, but also the user just wants, if they see something they don't like, they just want to get rid of it. They don't necessarily want to take the time to think which of these 5 options is the reason that I don't like this. And our users, to some extent, they're very excited about what we're doing, and they do want to help us train our system and help it get better, and they're very excited about working with us. But at the end of the day, even if they are excited about helping us, they just don't have the time to really take out of their workflow and give us that feedback. So I think that was the main thing that we saw didn't work for us.
Right.
And then just making it more seamlessly integrated into their workflow is what has been working for us recently.
That's such a, anyone who's been a Salesforce admin, you can relate to this, right? It's the unqualified reason in Salesforce that no single rep has ever wanted to fill in their entire life, and it makes sense, right? You're looking at a lead that you think is not qualified. Why do you want to go and spend time explaining why? You're like, no, I'm done with this lead. It's not qualified. I just want to move on with my day. So that's one of the things where in training AI, it's really hard because the false positives, the things that we thought were good that are not, that's where we need the most feedback. But counterintuitively, it's where end users are typically going to give the least amount of information. So yeah, definitely something we see a lot too. On our side, I think one of the things that has worked extremely well for us, and that in the first place hadn't, was when you're building AI today, I think people have started to realize this, but it's not about algorithms. Like, no one is, at least in the B2B space, revolutionizing AI because they've invented a new way of doing stochastic gradient descent. It's very well documented. Like, everyone knows how to do that. It's more about figuring out which workflows are you changing and how do you really break down a business problem into a mathematical problem and solve for that. And I think that's where the combination of, it's not really worth hiring just pure PhDs in data science. It's really important to have a core business component to understand that business users don't want to spend time giving feedback on qualified leads, but they want to get just more meetings, and figuring out how you build a product around that is extremely important. So really constantly focusing on the business and the customer value rather than the sexiness of the models that you're using in the background. Definitely something that worked well for us.
Yeah.
So I think we're almost over. Happy to take any questions. Yes?
I've got a question, Emily. Given the fact that AI needs to be trained, and so in the case of EM's issues with IBM, there were thousands of patient records that were really not fit for purpose in terms of being analyzed by machine learning and other techniques. So in your pre-sales process, how much past data, how much past information are you getting from your client so that you can, in essence, start to preload some of the information into the AI so it can start learning rather than waiting until a go-live date, and that dealing with people's expectations.
Right.
That takes time.
So the question is, how much training data do you need pre-sales to actually be able to have something that on day one is actually going to generate value?
Creating the expectation
Right.
as to, okay, you're going to go live with this, but it's going to be a period of time before you've got enough data that's been analyzed where you start to see some measurable results.
Right. So yeah, managing expectations is a big part of that. We do have a lot of training data. So before we engage with the customer, we ran a knowledge-based acceleration program where we got tons and tons of training data on people judging the value of recommendations that our system was generating. So that's good. But like you said, it's very true. There is kind of a learning curve of our tool. So, when we engage with a customer, first of all, we have someone from our team on site working really closely with the users to help them through any issues. And I think that is a big part. We let them know that some things might not be perfect now, but the more you use it, we're really learning from your interactions with our system, from your feedback, and so just kind of giving hope that the more you use it, the better it'll get. But that's definitely a challenge that we face when we're engaging with a new customer.
So I think we're slightly over. We need to get unmiked, but we'll take the questions right here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.